I'm here on behalf of the Lotus Center, and we're doing a series of talks over the next couple months, every 2 weeks, to just kind of bring our perspective of our medicine to the general public. So thank you for coming. My name is Tracey. I've actually just joined the Lotus Center in the last couple months, starting to work with Michelle Salinas and Blake Faulkner over there, and Nikki, who has joined us recently, helping us out. So I envisioned this as kind of a discussion about the seasons, about the tastes and how to prepare and how to best move through the changes of the seasons. And I'm going to make an assumption that those of you who are a part of your local co-op are already at some level attuned to your food choices, attuned to how the seasons change. And so some of this might be common knowledge or common sense. But what I aim to do is bring a little bit more of the philosophy of Chinese medicine into thinking about the seasonal changes. And the best way to do that, I feel, is to kind of talk about a system that we use called the 5-element system, and as they relate to the different meridian systems and organ systems that we work with therapeutically, and the associations of each of those, and how we can use the flavors and tastes associated with them to make our transition into the seasons. So I want to talk a little bit about the 5 elements, and then talk a little bit about flavors, and then specifically kind of delve into the characteristics of fall and winter. So what about eating? What about the seasons, and why should we care? What do we notice the trends are these days? What are we less in tune to do, or less likely to do with our eating habits? I mean, there was a time we used to go to bed and wake up with the sun and eat what was locally available to us. We had kind of an inherent knowledge or feeling about what our bodies needed. But now we have shelves full of all sorts of foods, packaged foods, ready to go, lots of choices, and it seems like the trend has been to stick with a few staples and carry that on throughout the year. In general, we have little strategy about how to prepare. But we still experience the seasons regardless. We go through the ebb and flow of them every year. We feel it in the changes in the air. We feel it in our bodies. We feel it in our minds and our spirit. What's the distinction between the expansive energy of summer and the somewhat consolidating yin of the winter, where we can be prone to things like depression or coming, very inward. And to understand this, a really good system to utilize is 5-element theory. And I know you've probably all heard about 5 elements in one way or another: the earth, the fire, the water, the wood, all of those components. So in Chinese medicine, every season has an organ related to it, an emotion, a color, a taste. And we're going to focus on autumn and winter, so the metal and the water. But just to give us just to orient ourselves, I'm just going to just talk about the energetics of these as we approach these 2 last ones. So this is the way they're oriented is called a generating cycle, and each one generates the other. The wood burns to generate the fire turns to ash to generate the earth turns to minerals to generate the metal, and so on. So a wood, this is the spring energy. This is the green, this is the growth. It's associated with the taste of sour, the emotion of anger, the color green, and the organ systems we work with is the liver and gallbladder. So this energetic is rising. It's the sprout crashing through the earth and trying to reach its full potential to the sun. Then we go into summertime, fire. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is the heart and the small intestine. This is the emotion of joy, the taste of bitter, obviously the temperature of heat. And this is our all-expansive growth. This is when we're at our optimal growing in summertime. Everything is green, it's reaching its full potential and expansive power. And then we transition into late summer, or the earth element. This is the spleen and the stomach. This is all of our digestive processes. And this relates to worry, it relates to dampness, it relates to the muscles, and the energetic at this time is centering, and we're beginning to turn inward. The earth element, you can argue, you can put into the middle of this cycle as well, because that can be both in this area of the generating cycle, but it can also be, you can think of it as the transitionary system. So it can be between, our transition between all of the seasons. I mean, our digestive health is key, right? The way we absorb and utilize our nutrients. And then that brings us into autumn and the metal element. And this is the flavor of pungency. It's associated with grief. Out of balance, we can get too into grief. It's all about the lung and large intestine, literally about letting go. So if we have a hard time letting go of things in our lives, we can, get caught up in the grief, and this can bring us into a place of depression. It relates to the skin, the lungs again, and the element of dryness, and also like the nose, the sinuses, the mucous membranes. And that energy is much more inward moving. And this is where it's the harvest. We're gathering, we're turning inward. And we're starting our consolidation process for the winter and water. And this is our true yin. This is the deepest of the deep. And this is a purely consolidating time of the year. And this is our inward thinking, a time for meditation. This is where we're going to regenerate for the rest of the year. It's a great time to rejuvenate from chronic illnesses. This is going to be our starting point for how we manifest everything else coming after that. It's associated with salty, the cold, the ears, and a downward consolidating energy. And also the bones, the structure of the body. So how do we use the cycle, the elements, to attune us to the seasons? Food is our daily medicine. It's a powerful tool to help us attune or strengthen and tonify with the seasons. But how do we utilize it? So to talk about flavors, the first thing we want to distinguish is using flavors and foods to either strengthen an organ system or to correct imbalances in an organ system. So we're talking preventative care, preventative therapy, and we're talking therapeutic therapy. And for example, the pungent flavor of fall, you may use the upward and outward nature of that to push out pathogenic factors, as we call them, things that are threatening the exterior of our body, threatening to come in deeper and cause deeper illness. But if your lung, large intestine are very attuned to the fall, if you've done a really good job strengthening those organs, then you might have little need for those flavors in your fall diet. So is that kind of clear, that distinction? We're talking about strengthening the system and then taking care of any problems that may come in there if it's not strong enough. So second, we always have to keep in mind that a flavor or a taste that's associated with each of the elements used in excess can harm the organ it's meant to tonify. So I'm thinking of two very distinct tastes in our society that we well overdo. Any guesses? Sweet, sugar, yes, and salt, yeah. So ideally, Chinese medicine associates sweet with the taste of rice, not with the Danish. not with the double chocolate vegan cookie in the cookie.
They call it Joanna.
The cookie closet. So used in the right ways, that sweetness, those subtle sweetnesses help to tonify the spleen and the stomach and aid in digestion. But overdoing it actually weakens absorption. It causes a lot of excess mucus, and it causes a lot of things like blood sugar imbalances. So you can begin to see the kind of complexity of how you can look at the flavors and tastes of the seasons. And third, with flavors, you have to keep in mind that all the elements check and balance each other. So when we do have a weakness or something that challenges us in one element in one season, the likelihood of that having not been resolved can flow into the next season. So if you had some trouble digestively in the late summer and at time of the spleen, you're not going to be coming into fall with your full potential, and you can manifest, more symptoms in the lungs, like bronchitis or sinusitis, things like that. So problems with the flow of energy in one element can definitely flow into the next, and so on and so forth. So, and lastly, and this is just to touch upon the talk we're going to have in a couple of weeks, the biggest thing, we're looking at this in the seasons as a macrocosm. This is a general flow of the elements, a general flow of our food choices. And we are individuals. We come into this with our own bag of weaknesses and strengths. Some of us might be more prone to digestive issues. Some of us are prone to frequent colds and thus the lung system. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to do individual pulse and tongue diagnosis here and do specific food recommendations at that time for you as an individual. So within the seasons, we can work in this construct, and then we keep in mind that we can also use these on an individual way. So we just got through with the hustle and bustle of summer. Our energy was expansive. We had tons of hours in the day. It was the most yang energy of the year, and there was a lot of movement and heat. So our tendency was towards probably light, cooling foods. So we're talking about a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, and seasoning and spices like cilantro, peppermint, mints, all things to kind of, keep that heat in check and to make our bodies feel comfortable. But now, at this time, we're entering into the consolidating, restorative part of our year, and into fall. So what do we know about the fall? We just talked about the element of metal relating to the lungs, pungency, grief, the skin and the pores. Climatically, what kind of changes do you notice when we come into this season? What predominates? We're going from the heat of summer to coolness and dry. I was going to say, I need a little lotion, and the dryness, the harvest time. So it's a season of harvest, and it's a time to pull inward and to gather our resources, and start to prepare for the stillness of winter. And nature is doing the same thing. The sap in the trees is moving downward into the roots, and everything is drying up above. So when fall is, it's the active phase of our year begins to turn yin, and we approach winter. And this is the hinge season. So in the hinge season, like spring, we're kind of transitioning from the absolute yang, expansive energy from summer, to the absolute yin, quiet energy of winter. And when we're in that state, what are we experiencing right now? Some days it's cool, some days it's hot, we're going back and forth, our pores are opening and closing to accommodate this. And when we do that, when we are accommodating in this transitional season, we're a lot more susceptible to things coming in, especially if we have a vulnerable lung metal system. So this is when the time of the lung energy predominates. This is the time when it's most vulnerable to attack. And we've all experienced it. We start to get a little chill and fever, a little tickle in the throat, maybe a little dry cough, dry skin. And the lungs in Chinese medicine preside over what we call our defensive qi, our immunity, in a sense. And when you think of the metal, when you think of the lung, it's kind of like our gatekeepers of our external body. It's the first line of defense for anything coming in, and the pores shutting down or opening to accommodate that. So what I'm going to look at first is the characteristics or energetics of fall and the foods of fall, or anything that benefits the lung qi and yin, and this is the preventative quality to this. So this is strengthening the lungs with foods that nourish what we call the qi, or the function of the lung, and the yin, or the substance of the lungs. Because we want to be able to assess our lung vitality, and we want to nourish that lung vitality. How are our sinuses, nasal passages, air passageways? How is the health of our skin? Are our mucous membranes healthy? Because ideally, a healthy lung maintains a light, moist, protective layer on our mucous membranes, and so we're able to, flow with whatever comes our way. We easily expel whatever comes our way with minimal effort. So some of the foods that we focus on, I have some listed here, but pears are very resonant with the lungs. We have persimmons and almonds, reinforcing the lung qi and yin. All of our harvest foods, that's a given. The longer a food grows, the warmer its qualities. So we're into the root vegetables. It's miso soup time. We have lotus rhizome and fresh lily bulb. Those are just some alternatives to throw in there. But I have the sweet potatoes, red dates, goji berries, all things, and pumpkin, all things that resonate within the system. And those are what I kind of feel like are more the common sense ideas here. But what I want to talk about is what happens when the lungs are weak. How do we use this flavor of the meadow lung season when something is coming our way, when we're feeling that icky feeling coming on? And pungent. You would have an idea of what pungent is? It's kind of a tricky one for some people. They're like, what is pungent?
It's like the black walnut.
Yeah. So pungent, acrid, even like a spicy quality to it, where the energy is upward and outward to our peripheral of our body. So scallions, garlic, onions, chives, leeks, ginger, and then our spices, all the spices we cook with. Everything, basil, coriander, cumin, sage, parsley, thyme, black pepper. These are all things that are stimulating our wei qi, and they're transforming things in our body. So when our lungs are weak, we have unhappy lungs, and insert cute cartoon of sad lungs, pouty-lipped lungs, and you're going, it's okay, little lungs. I'm just gonna give you a little punch in the shoulder, tell you everything's gonna be okay. And he just falls over. He just has no gumption to stand up and protect himself with. He's got a lot of colds. He's got dry nasal, excess mucus, all that stuff we have, and using these spices, this is a time when you can kind of amp up the usage of those. You want that hot, spicy bowl of soup, like the scallions in them, ginger in them. And these are actually the herbs that we will use at the clinic when we're formulating an individual formula for you, using these pungent herbs in a category we call release the exterior. So we'll basically load up this formula to be very pungent and acrid in order to open the pores, get that out, shut the doors behind them, and let them know they're not welcome back in. Kind of energetic. Because pungency also stimulates, it's why we use them in so many cooking spices. It stimulates the digestion. It manages the mucus and disperses the mucus in the body. And a plethora of things. By entering, because it's resonant with the lungs, entering and clearing the lungs out. So these are just some ideas of some recipes that, thinking of your kanjis, thinking of your misos, your crock pot recipes, your slow cooker recipes. And I also included a few things that, excuse me, you have available to you here at Deep Roots, which are essential oils. A few of us at the Lotus Center are really interested in essential oils, and they're really powerful tools. And I put two little recipes in here, one for tonifying the lung qi, and one for when you do have a respiratory infection, which is a little bit of tea tree and palmarosa, ravensara, and lemon. So there's a plethora of different recipes you can use. So I just wanted to put a couple of things that were useful and at your dispense here at your local co-op as well. Along with the plethora of tonic teas with a lot of these pungent flavors in them, and herbs to help boost the wei qi, so the defensive qi, like thinking of your astragalus, your reishi mushrooms, anything that out there that has these immune boosting qualities are working with that lung qi dynamic. So having things on hand that are preventative, things that you can do on a daily basis, are really, really useful. So your lung energy wasn't up to snuff, and you come into fall, and you start to get that I'm coming down with a cold feeling. You're gonna use the pungency of fall to help expel that. You're gonna continue to attune or strengthen with the season with some of these nourishing foods, and then you can head to the clinic and get some really good herbs and treatment to help rebalance your body wherever it might be stuck or having a hard time tonifying and strengthening in this way. So that's kind of it for fall. Do you have any questions about anything that you're curious about with the ideas of this? Or is it pretty self-explanatory? I'm just going to finish up with a few points about winter, because it's really continuing the idea of fall. But, you know, here we are about to be in winter, and by this time you've perfected the harvest season. You've perfected the building of the lung and large intestine, the metal element, and you're ready for the transition into hibernation of winter. So this is where we get our 30 days off, curl up in bed, sleep for 30 days and 30 nights, right? No? Yeah. Wrong place, wrong society. And although we can't do that, we can assist the process. Winter is our utmost yin of seasons. It's the water element and strongly associated with the kidney and the bladder. The taste is salty, the temperature cold. It's associated with fear. It is a very downward and consolidating energy. So, as winter is associated with the kidneys, Chinese medicine holds that the kidneys are our body's most basic fundamental energy. This is the basis of our essence. This is the basis of our constitution. It's both the cauldron that holds the yin fluids of the body and the fire underneath it that steams it up through the body. So this is kind of one of our most crucial times, our most crucial organ systems. And this is the goal now, is to continue from fall, but purely preserving our energy, building our strength, and regenerating in order to be ready and to put forth our best effort into spring. When spring comes around, we want to have enough gumption under our sails, or I kind of merged a few sayings there, but you know what I'm saying. So that when we're coming through and we're having that rising energetic spring, we don't want this little shabby little seedling coming through. We want to come up through with our full potential. We want to reach for the sun. We want to bring ourselves into the new year, the new growth. We want to rejuvenate. But what do we do now? We maintain the same level all year long, right? It's kind of the status quo. We go, go, go. We keep the same hours. We do the same things. And that taxes our kidney system. And in Western medicine, we think about this as adrenal fatigue. A lot of people are constantly fighting adrenal fatigue because we don't get that restorative time. So winter is the best time to boost this natural constitution of the body and improve symptoms, like I said earlier, especially with chronic diseases. This is going to be our go point, you know. And just to emphasize avoiding cold raw foods, continuing with the warming, hearty soups and stews, whole grains, roasted nuts, and combining foods completely. This is using lower heat, less water, and for longer periods of time to really maximize the warming functions of the foods. So it's really similar to fall, but now we're going to transition into the concepts of the water element. And in water, the flavor changes to salty. And salty has a very centering quality. It moistens dryness, it softens nodules, it improves the digestion, and it detoxes the body. And it attunes you to the colder season. But it should be added gradually. And I'm talking about adding nourishing salty substances like seaweeds. So bringing more seaweeds into the mix, miso, pickled soy sauce, that kind of salt. And we're not talking about sodium chloride, our table salt variety, but bringing in these really nourishing salt sources. And of course, we don't want to overdo it because what can strengthen an organ in excess can also weaken it, right? The water element's also associated with the bones, so good hearty bone broths for, those of you who are not vegetarian. That's just bringing it right back to the essence of the water element. And I mean, make up big batches. I'll freeze some and I'll pull it out and add some seaweed, add a little bit of barley, all of these nourishing substances. It's basically like drinking a tonic at that time. The color is black, so think in terms of anything, the law of signatures, things that are black resonating. So black beans, black mushrooms, black sesame seeds, black soybeans, all of that. And then that it relates to the essence. And the essence, we think about, what we came from, the seed being kind of the eggs of the plant kingdom, and eggs themselves of all varieties being that seed, that essence of the animal kingdom. And even in a seafood scale, shellfish as well. So in that sense, then you think about seeds, you think about sesame seeds, the black sesame seeds, bang. That's the most for your buck in that sense. Can make sense? And then also, again, thinking about the herbs, astragalus and reishi, medicinal mushrooms of all kinds, those amazing adaptogens that can still keep us in line to fight what comes our way. It's often a trend in Chinese restaurants to prepare various meals in tune with the seasons, adding specific herbs like this to the dishes. So, but also keeping in mind that you can still use the flavors of the other elements, depending on what's individually happening in your body. If you're in one season and you're having an excess of heat, you can use the taste of bitter, the downward draining taste of bitter to flush that heat out of the body. So it's all, it's a plethora of ways to mix and match these according to your individual needs and according to the seasonal flow of our energy as well. So to keep you so that you never are ill, you could fight off anything because your system will be so intact and so strong. Add an extra hour to your winter sleep schedule. That's the little things. What
about people who are on a raw food diet and they try to do that all year, all the time?
Well, you could see when you look at it in this sense how that can be a problem. I mean, it's probably more conducive in the hotter times of the year than it is in our consolidating cold season. Because you're really, you want things that are really warm and combined in the winter. So it's so easy on your digestion, and it's warming the core of your body and nourishing the core of your body. So there's less taxation on the body. So there's a lot of, you can see how that would not make sense at all times of the year in this spectrum.
Yeah, balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive to eat cold raw food all the time.
Exactly, especially with people with different constitutions that might feel good in some people's bodies, but in other people's bodies who already have a propensity to be cold and no bueno.
Yeah.
So.
I think we should look at ice cold water with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like everything, all the diets that some when you see them being kind of extreme or all in one direction, you wonder about that variety, that change throughout the year, and how that does or does not fit into. We should be very fluid in the way we eat. We should be very conscious of what the energy is happening in that season and eat in accordance with that. I'm sure we're pretty good at identifying by now where we have problems along the way. Is it in the earth? Is it digestive? Is it in the respiratory system, the metal? Is there, a lot of heart heat associated with the fire in the summer, which manifests as anxiety and insomnia and things like that, So those things can flare at different times of the year, and they can definitely be treated at home with a dietary approach.
What I tell people is that when food is in the stomach, it needs to be at 100-degree soup or 100-degree soup. Soup like consistency in 100-degree temperature in order for the body to fully be able to maximize all the chi that it can from the food. And if it has to transfer that food to the 100-degree temperature and the soup-like consistency. It has to do a lot of work to do that, such as what has to happen with cold raw foods. Then it places a tremendous burden on the body, and it weakens the system over time. So it's not really strengthening at all. I mean, people look at that from a biochemical standpoint, but it doesn't take into consideration energy at all. And it really weakens the system over time.
You're
So it ends up
dousing,
not being very healthy.
Yeah.
you're dousing the stomach fire, essentially.
That's right.
And then you,
people wonder why they're having all these raw salads, but they can't lose weight. It's because they're killing their metabolism.
yeah.
We get into trouble because we try to ignore nature, the laws of nature, and we think that we can conquer nature, and instead of living in accordance with it. But the more we live in harmony with nature, the healthier we are. And really what Tracey brought about in today's discussion is that we can do a lot with paying attention to our own needs and to environmental needs and the nature of the seasons, and then making food choices and conscious consideration of that. So we get into so much trouble by ignoring it.
Absolutely.
Really, food is medicine.